On the seemingly ordinary Monday of July 28, 2008, the day was wrapping up like any other. Around 6:30 p.m., the usual office staff were leaving work. Undoubtedly, most of them were commuting back home. However, this normal day was shattered by a piercing scream coming from the direction of the Watt Tower parking garage in Century City. Carefully observe the CCTV footage. Do you notice something strange? Watch closely, look at all the people, and see who sticks out. If you guessed the large-statured man in a white shirt, you guessed right. This is exactly what the detectives observed as well. It seemed extremely strange for everyone to be heading towards the source of the noise and commotion, and this man to be preoccupied on his phone while all this is going on. Watch on to learn of his connection to this case, and this crazy story with twists and turns that surprised even the most seasoned detectives that were assigned to look into it.
Hi, this is Beverly Hills at 1925 Century Park East. You have a male beating a female on the third level of the parking.
Officers from the Los Angeles Police Department and paramedics were quick to arrive at the scene. And on the third floor of the parking garage, they discovered a tall, slender Caucasian woman lying down in a pool of her own blood. It appeared she had been stabbed multiple times and was drifting in and out of consciousness. At least 2 doctors and a bystander rushed to assist. The woman was immediately rushed to the hospital. Unfortunately, she was pronounced dead at the scene. The LAPD initiated an investigation into the matter. Witness Edwin Rivera provided a description of the assailant as a tall and slender male, attired in a black hooded sweatshirt and jeans. However, Rivera admitted to being unable to discern the assailant's facial features. The assailant was last observed departing the parking lot in a red SUV. The victim was identified as 44-year-old Pamela Fayed. She sustained multiple wounds to her head, neck, and chest, along with multiple wounds to her arms. The fatal wound was a deep laceration to the front of her neck. Notably, none of Pamela Fayed's personal belongings were taken, and there were no signs of sexual assault. This indicates that the perpetrator's intent was solely to cause her death. To uncover the events leading to Pamela Fayed's death, investigators proceeded by retracing her actions and circumstances before the incident. Police notified her next of kin, her husband, James Fayed, and, as is usually the case where a spouse is found murdered, the first person to look into is the person they were married to. James agreed to come in for questioning. Upon his arrival, detectives were surprised to find he was the same man as on the CCTV footage we saw at the beginning of this case. But, before we go any further, we must first understand the relationship between Pamela and James. Pamela Fayed, affectionately known as Pam, was renowned for her generosity to her friends and family. Described by friends as a cheerful, caring, and affectionate individual, she would light up a room with her presence and was generous with her time and availability to help anyone in need. Professionally, Pam was a successful jeweler and business owner. In 1989, as a single mother, Pam crossed paths with James Fayed, an electrician, and the two immediately connected. They tied the knot in 1999 and welcomed a daughter together, in addition to Pamela's older daughter from her previous marriage. Initially facing financial challenges, their fortunes shifted when Pamela Fayed, alongside her husband, James Fayed, co-founded Goldfinger Coin and Bullion in 2002. Goldfinger specializes in money and precious metal transfer services for a fee, operating primarily as an internet-based enterprise. They also established a related company, eBullion Company, incorporated in Panama with business offices in California. With their ventures proving lucrative, the Fayeds ascended to affluence, indulging in a luxurious lifestyle. Following the financial success of Goldfinger, the family acquired properties including a residence in Camarillo and a second home on a 200-acre ranch in Moore Park, referred to as Happy Camp Ranch. The early stages of the Fayeds' relationship were characterized by positivity, but over time, their love for each other began to dwindle. Around the same time, James Fayed's health began to deteriorate, reaching a point where he experienced significant pain due to rheumatoid arthritis, rendering him unable to regularly work from the office. In April 2007, Pamela had a chat with her friend Carol Neve, who also managed a similar e-currency business. They discussed Goldfinger's compliance with federal rules about money transfer licenses. She realized her business lacked the necessary license to comply with the rules and regulations. After getting guidance from Neve, Pamela decided to obtain the license. On October 6, 2007, she wrote a check for $400,000 to cover the necessary fees. However, James Fayed was vehemently opposed to this and argued it wasn't required. Following this, James Fayed filed for divorce in October 2007 and barred Pamela from accessing Goldfinger offices. The divorce proceedings were contentious to say the least, with disputes over bank accounts reportedly totaling over $12 million. To say that James acted harshly by denying his wife and business partner access to their company is an understatement. After all, she was the one who truly established the business. At some point, Pam found out that their business was under federal investigation for fraud and money laundering. She was unaware of this and reportedly agreed to assist with the investigation. However, James's decision to block her office access prevented her from doing so. Fortunately, there was another route for her to regain legal access and ownership of her business. Since James had already initiated divorce proceedings, she could use this to her advantage. By having the divorce court recognize her ownership, she could secure what she was rightfully owed. On July 28, 2008, the day of the murder, James and Pamela separately met with their respective attorneys to address the ongoing federal investigation into their Goldfinger business. The meeting was scheduled in the Century City offices of James Fayed's former attorney and lasted from 3:30 p.m. until approximately 6:30 p.m. that evening. Following the meeting, Pamela returned alone to her vehicle, parked on the third floor of the adjacent parking structure. After Pam's tragic death, detectives invited James Fayed for questioning. James agreed and appeared composed and ready throughout the process. During the interview, he denied any knowledge or involvement in his wife's death, insisting on his alibi that he was at the office with their attorneys when the crime occurred.
Spell your first name for me. James. Spell it James. Can you explain to me why you think somebody would want her? Can you explain to me why she was? I don't know. You don't know?
However, detectives noticed something odd in the CCTV footage from the outside building. James Fayed's behavior on camera was peculiar. He seemed oddly calm and, oddly enough, prepared for what was happening around him. As Pamela Fayed's terrifying screams filled the air, James Fayed seems undisturbed, engrossed in his mobile phone. Meanwhile, all the onlookers around him were rushing towards the off-screen car park building. Further examination of the footage revealed that Pamela Fayed was ambushed while walking towards her car. Detective Spear identified a red SUV captured in the footage as a suspect vehicle and obtained its license plate from an adjacent camera. Interestingly, the SUV was rented from Avis, a well-known car rental company. It was rented on behalf of Goldfinger and James Fayed. Bingo. Moreover, even though the SUV had undergone thorough steam cleaning before being returned to the rental service, forensic experts were still able to discover traces of Pamela's blood inside it. This was clearly a deliberate attempt to wipe out any evidence of the crime. The CCTV footage also depicted 3 individuals inside the vehicle. Through an investigation of parking garage tickets for fingerprints, the police identified the occupants. These were Jose Moya, or Joey, Gabriel J. Marquez, and lastly, Stephen Simmons. Moya, who was employed to assist James Fayed and work on the ranch, resided in a secondary dwelling on the property and was in a relationship with James's sister, Mary Mercedes. Notably, a fingerprint belonging to Simmons was discovered on a parking garage ticket. Telephone records corroborated suspicions, revealing that cell phones associated with Marquez and Simmons pinged a nearby cell phone tower at the time of the murder, coinciding with James Fayed's mobile phone activity. Additionally, records indicated a series of text messages exchanged between James Fayed and Moya around the time of the murder. Although the contents of these messages had been deleted from James's phone, investigators were certain that there were messages sent from his device. Were these the same messages that James Fayed was receiving and responding to? Well, it's not clear exactly, but one can only speculate that this was indeed the case. Possible motive. In early 2008, prior to Pamela's murder, the United States Attorney's Office, under Assistant United States Attorney Mark Avis, initiated a formal investigation into Goldfinger for its alleged involvement in a money laundering scheme. Collaborating with the FBI and the IRS, the investigation uncovered that the funds from 2 Ponzi schemes were being funneled through Goldfinger, resulting in substantial earnings for the company. Although James Fayed and Goldfinger were not directly implicated in the Ponzi schemes, the federal government pursued an indictment against them to gain leverage over James Fayed, to monitor financial transactions and to detect any illicit money transmitting activity. On February 26, 2008, 5 months before Pamela's murder, James Fayed and Goldfinger were indicted on federal charges of operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. Notably, Pamela was not named in the sealed indictment, which remained undisclosed to the public. However, in June 2008, subpoenas were issued to the accountants involved in the divorce proceedings. This was when Pamela became aware of the FBI and IRS's investigation into Goldfinger and her husband. Approximately a month later, Pamela's first criminal defense attorney, David Willingham, reached out to Mark Avis, indicating Pamela's willingness to cooperate in the criminal investigation against her husband and their company. Although there was no formal arrangement or agreement for Pamela to cooperate, Avis interpreted Willingham's statement as a sign of Pamela's cooperation. However, before any meeting could occur between Pamela and Avis, she was tragically killed. Notably, at the time, there was no indication that James Fayed was aware of the sealed indictment against him, and the government had not yet applied pressure on him to cooperate. Therefore, it remains uncertain whether James Fayed knew of Pamela's intention to cooperate with the FBI. However, it would be extremely naive to think this was all just a coincidence. If James had indeed discovered a leak, it would provide substantial evidence and a strong motive for him to orchestrate the murder of his own wife. The arrest. On the 1st of August 2008, 45-year-old James Fayed was taken into custody at his Moore Park Ranch home by FBI agents. This was part of a federal probe into his business operations. Shortly after his arrest, he was also named as the main suspect in the murder of his estranged wife. Fayed adamantly denied any involvement in his wife's murder. On the 9th of September 2008, Detective Abdul was informed by federal officials that Sean Smith, an inmate who shared a cell with James Fayed at the men's federal detention center, wanted to speak with the police. Following a meeting with Smith, Detective Abdul arranged for Smith to wear a wire during his return to his cell. During their covertly recorded conversation, James Fayed confessed to Smith that he had orchestrated his wife's murder by paying Jose Moya $25,000 to carry out the act. Furthermore, Fayed had also sought the services of a hitman to eliminate Moya as a witness in his upcoming trial. It was disclosed that shortly after initiating divorce proceedings in October 2007, James conspired to have his wife murdered. He enlisted the assistance of Jose Moya, who in turn recruited Gabriel J. Marquez and Stephen Simmons. It's disgusting to think how cowardly it is for a hitman to seek the assistance of two other grown men to ambush and attack a slender, unsuspecting woman. On September 15, 2008, James Fayed was formally charged with Pamela's murder. 3 years later, in 2011, he was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder in the 2008 death of his estranged wife. Pamela Fayed was only 44 years old. During the trial, it was revealed that James Fayed had earlier tried to involve his sister, Mary Mercedes, who was dating Jose Moya, in planning Pamela's murder. James's other sister, Patty Taboga, testified that Mary Mercedes had asked her if her husband, a Wyoming police officer, would commit the murder for a fee. Taboga was shocked by this and immediately turned down her sister's request, expressing her disbelief at the suggestion. Mary Mercedes then told Taboga she was not serious and their conversation should be disregarded. Once again, this author is left stunned by how pathetic some of these criminals are. Pam deserved so much better than these cowardly idiots in her life. Latest update. As of April 29, 2024, over $11.5 million have been returned to the victims of the fraud perpetrated by James Fayed. He was found guilty not only of his wife's murder, but also of operating an illegal money laundering Ponzi scheme. The refunded money has been distributed to the account holders in several countries, including the United States, Australia, and Canada. James Fayed is currently serving his sentence on death row at San Quentin State Prison in California. As the curtain falls on this love story gone wrong, we're reminded of the harsh realities of human relationships. What began as a story of two souls drawn together by an undeniable spark quickly unraveled into the ultimate betrayal. The man who once swore under oath to love and protect his wife in sickness and in health didn't show an ounce of emotion for her painful screams that he himself inflicted. Greed and wealth were his only one true love. Indeed, this case is a twisted interpretation of the solemn vows between husband and wife. Till death do us apart.
Who expresses a belief that if they're killed, they're going to be killed with a knife?
Mr. Fayed knew of his wife's phobia with knives, and that was one of the reasons that a knife was used.